lo que digo, rasgos. Tenemos cositas.
Yeah.
But we still don't know everything that happened. So we see it again and again and again. In New York City alone, approximately 1.7 to 2 million adults struggle with low literacy skills.
I don't even know.
Yeah, we don't have words. I will tell you this.
Why do you write? Ask yourself, what do you write? Do you think you could survive without writing?
Thank you. My name is Luz Maria Mack, and welcome to The Missing Book. The Missing Book started out as a project to highlight not only the individuals that are creating literature, but also the people that inspire us, the people that help us create these works of art, and also the books that we don't highlight in our culture. When we think about the books that get the most love, not only in traditional publishing, but as indie publishers, they're writers that do not come from our communities sometimes. It's very hard when one of our writers make it and rise to either fame or their book gets the love that it deserves. The purpose of The Missing Book is not just highlighting the stories that are created by creators like you, creators like I, but it's also talking about the big impact in literacy. My name is Luz Maria Mack. Like I said, I'm a Dominican children's book writer. I really started writing because of the love of wanting to see my kids reflected on the pages of a book. And before I start with my first guest, Roxana, I want to be very honest. This podcast will be very, very, very much bilingual. I am Dominican. My kids are Dominican and African-American. So we are always on the verge of very Dominicanish and very Americanish. So because of that, this podcast will be dedicated to celebrating both languages. So without further ado, I want to turn some time to Roxana to share who she is, the book she wrote, and why was it missing?
Hi, Luz. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Roxana Calderon. I was born in Brooklyn and raised in the Dominican Republic. I am a poet, published author, and editor. I also work in supporting emerging writers with their publishing process, their editing process. So it's something that I enjoy doing a lot. So I don't want to say my book was missing exactly, but I want to say my voice was missing.
Yes.
I growing up, I was very shy. I'm still very shy. And writing gave me a tool, gave me a voice for me to express myself and how I feel, and put in paper that voice that was missing. Those things that I didn't have the courage to say out loud. And that's how my two books came into existence. Basically, like that's that space between like, what do I want to say and should I say it?
Should I say it? That's a big one.
Yeah.
And, being anchored on that, should I say it? Can you share with us something you did dare to say and how it touched so many of us?
Sure. So this book, Esto no es poesía, This is not poetry, it's like a book of like notes and poems and short stories. And the name came because when I was in this workshop and throughout life, as a writer, I kept finding people that told me what I wrote was not poetry. So I was like, okay, it's not poetry, and that's going to be the name of the book for whatever it is that you want to name what I'm writing. The name of this poem is it's in Spanish, but it's called November 13, 13 de noviembre de 2020. This book is separated by year from 2018 all the way to 2022.
Okay.
Ser de aire que parece tierra, diosa del corazón, Tienes la destreza de confundirte en el ambiente para resguardarte de las almas depredadoras. Creación indescifrable. Existir te ha hecho evolucionar, manejando con elegancia el arte de engañar a aquellos que buscan destruir tu existencia con su psicología inversa. Metamórfica, avatar de variación continua. Pese a los cambios, tu raíz permanece intacta, exótica y perfecta. Prefiere no tocarte y conservarte. Vehemente pero flexible. Tienes todas esas cualidades que asustan e hipnotizan. Lengua majestuosa que seduce con rapidez al expresar palabras que acarician las neuronas de los demás. Mirada que no se deja manipular. Intensa como el sol, intensa como la luna. Mientras los demás anhelan brillo, tú eres, tú fuiste y siempre serás.
Oh my God, qué bello, hermoso.
Thank you.
Gracias por traernos ese poema. But is this poem about you?
Oh, it is.
And what made you write this poem?
It is. Oh
and
my
why
God.
is it not a poem? And this is so perfect as my first episode about you.
So for me, it is a poem, right? But I found myself like every time I share something I wrote, you know, like either in school or in workshops or like with other people, people will say like, "Oh, this is not poetry," right? And I wrote that poem because I was having a conversation with my ex, and we
Oof.
were very exes, right? We were not together, but we were good friends to some point. And we were talking about like animals, and I was like, okay, so if you would have to describe me as an animal, what I will be, right? And he said, you're a chameleon.
Oh,
You adapt yourself to any environment, like.
and that's a trait.
Yeah.
That's a good trait to
He
have.
was like, whatever you place, you adopt that color and you just like rock with it either to survive or because it's convenient to you. And I was like, oh, that's nice of you to say. So immediately after we hung up, I wrote that poem.
That is such a that was awesome.
Yeah.
And that was like also very introspective
Yeah.
because when you think about it, so when we started talking, we talked about not, your poem is not a poem, not being able to talk and not even or talk or express yourself about your inner thoughts and how this book came to be because of your inner thoughts. Do you feel that a lot of what you wrote is not only yourself, but reflections about how you were brought up, meaning you were not welcome to talk or share your experience or even share who you were? Or did you say, no, I always am giving myself permission to say how I feel, my thoughts, and share it to the world?
So something I always tell people is that I write for me. I just have the blessing and the luck to have the opportunity to put it into books and sell it for people to buy it, right?
Yeah.
Because I believe that it was a talent that was given, and I strongly believe that talents have to be used. But I write for me. So when I write, I don't hold.
Ooh,
I don't hold. I don't hide.
perfect.
The only thing I respect is like the privacy of others, like of people involved in my stories, right? Like I don't mention names. I don't mention like details because at the end of the day, yes, it's my story, but I also want to be respectful of the things I share. And something that's very funny at the past Dominican Writers Conference during the poetry panel, I was like, I have some good stories. I'm just waiting for some people to die.
I'm glad you mentioned that because when we write, my husband always says, we could tell who you're mad at because of the post you wrote or who it is or things like that. But both things could be true. We could hold space for the person that impacted our writing, right? And also share like something that we learned from that experience. And people don't see
Don't
that.
exactly have to know.
And they don't have to know,
No.
because even though we don't name the person or we don't say, the experience still happened.
Yeah.
And I always think it's fair game. If it happened to me, it's coming out.
It is. It is.
It's coming out because it's my truth, and it's my truth to untangle. And because you started with your book saying esto no es poesía, I also know that publishing, let's talk about traditional publishing, because I think people don't understand the difference between traditional publishing, putting this on your own, the work, being told is not a poem or being told is not a book that is comparable to those of publishers. What's the difference and why does it matter?
Listen, at the end of the day, like I said, some things just have to come out, right? Like with traditional publishing, sometimes you have like, so I have the experience, my first book was published by the publisher, Dominican writers, right? This second book I published myself.
How much did
I
it cost you?
self-published it. It didn't cost me a lot,
But it cost you something.
but it cost me something.
Yeah.
And not only that, when the book was published by somebody else, the amount of work I had to do was very limited, right? The book was edited. I didn't have to pay for that. The book cover, all these things, because people think like, oh, I'm going to publish a book and it's just like, I need the writing. No, an editor costs, a graphic designer costs. Those things are not,
And it adds up quickly.
and it adds up quickly. And, when you have to do revisions and things like that, people don't understand that. But also, when you go with a traditional, like method, you are very limited. Like I said before, sometimes you don't even keep your copyrights.
You don't keep your copyrights.
Um,
You're basically selling
Yeah.
your thoughts
Yeah.
for that, and then you cannot use it anywhere
Yeah.
else. That's something that a lot of people don't realize. Yeah, those are your innermost thoughts, Roxana, and that is you. And that's something that you could use anywhere.
Yeah.
You could read it at poetry festivals. You could read it at conferences.
Turn it into whatever I want.
You could turn it into a curriculum. But
Yeah.
once it's through a traditional publisher, you're not allowed to touch that.
No. And they could do whatever they want. They could come up with a movie.
Yeah. They could use it as a song for their
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
They could change all the words and just keep your name. That happens so much, and it's so pervasive.
And sometimes, like there are publishers that are a little less, like strict, and they will hold your copyrights for a certain amount of years, but then whatever, you don't know what they do or what they're gonna do. And it's when I published the first book, the perks, right? Because it also has its perks.
Yeah,
like
it
I
has
said,
its
like the
perks.
editor, the graphic designer. I didn't do my book launch.
Someone did it for you.
Somebody did it for me and
Yeah.
covered the cost. Or somebody organized book tours and book events and helped me with the marketing, which is great, right? But at the other side, I did it, like I was lucky enough because it's a nonprofit organization to keep my book rights. But if I didn't, at the end of the day, I'm literally paying, like for all the things they cover, that if you want to see it that way.
But even if you're a traditionally published author, a lot of people don't understand that as a traditionally published author, you get an advance or sometimes no advance.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't talk about those indie publishers. That is no advance. And then they're not so much indie publishers because they're represented by bigger publishing houses. So those no advance moments happens to give you a taste of what traditionally published could hold. They provide opportunities for you to like have paid opportunities, which is rare.
Yeah.
And then the book is like a birthday.
It is.
Like you are always celebrating the book.
Yeah.
So people like come to my birthday party and see me do this thing.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work. With this second book, I was able to like experience it more because I had to put my own book launch together, right? Which was like so beautiful.
Yeah.
But I had to find an editor. I had to find a graphic designer.
And not all editors are created equal.
No. No.
I had that experience where I noticed the big difference between one editor to another.
Yes.
And one of my biggest issues with finding an editor is that I had an editor who's not Hispanic, under edit the Dominican experience in such a way that it wasn't Dominican. So that editor could not, is not, I don't want to say that they weren't good, because they are good. But like, if I'm writing something very Dominicanish, or very much that it's very about how I grew up, how could they edit to that effect? You know,
that's like another side of like the publishing process, like the editing part, right? Where me, when I came out as an author, one of my fears was like, because like poetry is really hard to translate. It's like like cultural experiences, right?
Yeah.
How do you translate a cultural experience?
It's like the joke you can't say in Spanish.
Yeah.
And translate it in, like an English joke, you can't say it in Spanish because it's not the same effect.
Like translating slang, it's very difficult. So I was like very scared, because I was like, oh my goodness, like I don't want my poetry to be turned into something, because it happens, you know, like I know of people that have experienced that by the time the editor finishes, it's like the poem is not a poem anymore. It's like something else.
It is.
And it has happened to me, like also like during like writing workshops. And that's why it's so good to find somebody that, you know, aligns with your idea and your thoughts. And also that sometimes people say like, oh, you know, like it's not important for the editor to understand what's going. Yes, it is.
It is.
Because I don't have to translate and to speak to you and to explain to you that in Dominican Republic, we say guagua, right?
Yes.
And we don't say, what's the other?
Or cepillo.
Or cepillo.
Or
right?
cepillo for a small car. Because people are thinking cepillo, like the hair comb.
And we don't say, what's the other name in Spanish? The correct name in Spanish for el autobús. We don't say el autobús.
We say guagua.
We don't say, estoy esperando por el autobús. No, we don't talk like that. But then comes an editor.
Or the joke, el camión de Don Fernando. Un poquito a pie, el otro andando.
So then comes the editor trying to do their job. And as they should, you know, and they have the knowledge. But then you're trying to speak to them and explain, like, you know, like, oh, this book is about Dominican little boy that is taking the bus to school, but we don't call it el autobús, we call it a guagua. And I want people to be able to, and then like there comes a back and forth and whatever. That's why I feel like it's so important for like people to
understand,
at least understand, or be open, right? Because you don't have to be Dominican, but be open, listen to me.
No, it's like the same thing about saying, you know, I grew up. Let's remove the country. Let's concentrate New York City. The difference between growing up in the Bronx and in Queens.
Yeah.
The Bronx, Queens, Long Island.
Yeah.
Bronx, Queens, Long Island, Manhattan. Yeah, we grew up in New York City, but that's a very different experience depending on the borough you're growing up. And one of the things I want to showcase is that the reason this podcast is called The Missing Book is because I'm not sure if you're so aware, or many people are aware of the percentage of books that are written by people of color that happen to be Dominican, Venezuelan, Puerto Rican, Cuban, or things, but it's minimal. At one point, we were 4%. That was in 2015, 2024, 2025. I think we were a little higher. And then now with our current presidential administration, and because there's lack of diversity yet again, we see that those numbers dwindled out. And if that's about Latino America, imagine Asian culture, imagine African-American culture. So we are in many places the majority, but our voices are still not even represented at all. No. So when you say mi libro no es poesía, it's bigger than that, because it means like the people that are shaping and contributing to this country, they're stating their wants and needs of how to be represented. We're not even thinking about them.
And I think it goes like, it's like something bigger than only the country, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to literature and, you know, like the canons and like what literature is supposed to look like. Yeah, you know. And like the expectation of like the work you do has to like look exactly like
this way.
Like this is like a pattern, and you have to
it's a formula. It's like making cake. For them.
Yes.
And I say absolutely. For them meaning bigger publishers, but even when they're thinking about how to have someone with a diverse perspective or lived experience, they still make it back to the recipe.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sad. I graduated from a master's in publishing last year, right?
Yes, I was going to ask about that. How did it feel becoming now a publisher in your own way?
It feels good. I have some things coming on.
Anything you want to share or not yet? Not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet. But speaking about representation, one of the reasons I wanted to join this program is because we need more faces, right?
Yes.
Like that look like us, that could represent, that also understand the stories and the narrative that are being written and that are willing to accept that without, like creating these changes to like fit certain things, right?
Certain groups, certain ages,
like a certain audiences. And
yeah.
when I was in the program, there were only 2 people of colors.
Wow.
Yeah, me,
and that says a lot because that's how publishing is. Barely any people
and
of
another African-American lady, and I was the only Latina in the cohort.
That hurts.
Yes.
Not only does it hurt me because I had the experience of working in a couple of projects that obviously for personal reasons I can't mention a lot. And I was the only Caribbean. So they hired everyone for Latino America was the predominantly like Mexican or Salvadorian. And then I was Caribbean, Dominican, but they call me Afro-Latina because I was like the La Negrita with the braids, con ese sazón. And I didn't mind. I love that.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, it is very different. It is a very different cultural perspective. And a lot of the individuals that were in that group, they shared a lot of things in common because Caribbean culture is different than South American culture. Yeah. Again, we go back to like the 5 boroughs. Is it the same if we live in Manhattan, Brooklyn?
And also the impact of colonization,
and the
like
age
in the Caribbean and in South American, and how still that colonization, it's like rooted.
And it impacts us because I call it paper genocide.
Yeah.
So we talk about, genocide is like the extinction of a group, right? We know that. So paper genocide is a term I heard years ago, and I didn't know how appropriate it is for us. Yeah. Because, for example, us being Dominicans, we know about Taino culture, Tainos. We don't have a lot of information about the Tainos. So do you think no one was taking scribes and writing down their history? No, it was paper genocide. It was completely erased. We have, lo que digo, rasgos. Tenemos cositas.
Yeah.
But we still don't know everything that happened. So we see it again and again and again. Like certain stories are not shared. And we see that with media and everything else. So you writing to your experiences, how are you trying to extend your posterity?
So that's a very interesting question. Few months ago, I was teaching a workshop about letters and how to use letters to preserve memory.
Yes.
And there was the day in the workshop, I think it was like February 17th. So every week I would bring like a letter, like we read something from Oscar Wilde, and then we read something from a letter from James Baldwin. And that day we were reading another letter. I don't remember now the name of the writer, but the book is called Letters to a Young Poet.
Yes, I heard of it. I heard it's beautiful.
Yes. So we there, and that day I knew I wanted to read something from that book, but I didn't read it, so I read it like right before class. And when I opened it, it was also February 17th, but from 1903.
Oh, wow.
And I'm telling the people, participants in the workshop, like, this letter was written a day like today, maybe like, 200 years ago? No, not 200 years ago. Like 1903. My math is terrible, but like 50 plus years.
Yeah. A long time ago.
Yeah.
Not today.
And look how this message is so relevant to today. Because the young poet was receiving an advice about poetry, and don't let nobody tell you what you need to write, and why do you write? Ask yourself, what do you write? Do you think you could survive without writing? If you cannot survive without writing, that is your trait. If you think you could continue breathing, if that is taken away from you, go and dedicate yourself into something else.
Ooh.
And as we were reading that, I was like, our writing is how we preserve our memory. It's how we document.
What
right?
happened to us?
What happened
The
to
people
us,
involved.
the people involved, what was going on in our surroundings, how our generation was thinking, right? How other generations, like so many things like go into a writing and that way to preserve memory. But also, like the guy on the book was saying, right? If you stop writing,
Yes.
can you survive?
Ooh. Well, unfortunately, generation of our families and other cultures had to survive without writing. We have, I don't know if you know, but I know family members that were illiterate and they couldn't survive.
But you know what they were? Great storytellers.
They were great storytellers. And listen, my beloved grandmother, that may she rest in peace and hopefully is guiding me still. She was illiterate. She still, I think she signed her name marking it with an X because I remember hearing stories about that. Yeah, the 3 X's. And her husband was a business owner. He was like, I believe he went to college. I believe so because he made it far in politics and was traveling the world. But one thing was for certain, although my grandmother was illiterate, she pushed my mother to finish her college degree. And she finished it, I believe, in her late 40s while she was done raising kids. And my mom has a master's. But it came from this illiterate woman that I had no idea was illiterate till I was much older, pushing us. So yeah, you're right. They were great storytellers, but they didn't have the benefit of surviving without someone that knew how to write. And this brings me to an actual fact I'm going to read to you that I think it's important to note. And the reason I'm saying it's a fact that's important to know. I was looking up this. So here is a fact that people might not know. According to the City Literacy Organization and census-based analysis, many adults can read simple text but struggle with applications, contracts, healthcare forms, workplace documents, or helping children with homework. So we know this is a fact.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to a couple more facts. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, about 21% of U.S. adults have low literacy skills. Roughly 43 million adults read at or below basic literacy skills. Around 54% of adults read below a 6th grade level. About 59 million adults score at the lowest literacy levels measured in national assessment. And then when we think about children, 64% of 4th graders are not reading proficiently. So we are plagued with illiteracy.
Yeah, it's very scary.
And it's a fact. And people don't know the impact of not knowing how to read. So when we think about poverty and employment, 43% of adults with the lowest literacy skills live in poverty. That's not a lie. I remember when I was going to, I was at this job, this woman told me, the bigger the house, the bigger the library.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. She said, it doesn't matter if they even read all the books. If your house is full of books, you are thriving. And that's a very, like, that was something that really, like, hit me to the core. Because when we think about thriving, do we think about books? Do we think about its impact?
No, I don't. I think like those facts are very alarming, and you see it a lot. You know, I have worked inside schools. I've done work with nonprofits and educational organizations, and it's very alarming. It's very, very alarming because at the end of the day, reading and writing are fundamental.
Yeah. we needed to do this podcast.
Yeah.
I needed it to read this fact.
Yeah.
I needed it to book a call with you to get you here.
Yeah.
Like even like those simple skills.
No, it's like even for you to like move around in a city.
Yes.
Right?
Like even traveling
Even
to and
traveling.
from.
Yeah. Like to survive, right? And it's sad. It's very sad because also sometimes it's that they don't know how to read or write, or that they don't know how to read. It's people are not reading to comprehend anymore.
No.
Or people are not being taught to learn how to comprehend, right? I don't even know.
Yeah, we don't have words. I will tell
No.
you this. I want to say like less than 4 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago, I was booked. One of my packages is that I do author visits. I could do an author visit for an hour, for 3 hours, or for the whole day. So the school booked me for the author of the day. That means I go to different classrooms to read. And I have like a wide range of books that I've written, right? And as an author of the day, and I don't get to do this many times, but when I do, it brings me so much joy. But when I'm providing the catalog to the school, I'm like, okay, what are the grades? Here's my catalog of work. This is from K through second. This one is second through fourth. And I usually say, I do K through 5, you know? So they booked me and they said, this is a kindergarten class. This is the first grade class. Let's pick the books. And then when it got to the 4th and 5th grade class, I'm like, okay, so I recommend these books. They're like, no, the same books you read for the K through 3rd grade, that's what you're going to read to the 4th and 5th graders. And I never forgot that experience. That experience was so telling. I remember going back home and telling my husband, I gave my husband a lot of hard time. Not obviously, as a wife, we always give them a hard time. I love him to death, but I gave him a hard time because we put our kids in every educational opportunity available to us, and a lot of these are costly.
Yeah.
And one of those is independent schools, private schools. I was like the only Dominican and a grade level for when my kids got accepted into the schools they were in. And I learned a lot through that experience. But the one I learned the most is like the people with access. They don't care what it costs as long as their kid is learning something, right? So then after having the opportunity to do this, apply for scholarships, apply for all these opportunities available for my kids, here I am in a public school seeing over 500 students. You see 500 students, right? Because most classrooms, the smallest size is like 40 students. So if I was an author for the day, and sometimes they book me an auditorium full of 300 students, you could imagine I was seeing a lot of students, right? To see and hear that 4th and 5th graders were reading like
below their grade level.
That's when it hit me. Wow, I'm really writing for someone to learn.
Yeah.
And so for you, I give you my experience and I want to give it to you. When was it that you noticed that your experience was not just yours, it was for someone else to process their life?
So, like I started writing my 2 books are about mostly romantic poetry, right? And I talk about a lot of like emotional baggage, toxic relationships, and things of that nature, right? With the first book, I had the beautiful experience that beyond the fact that people were like relating themselves to my stories and seeing themselves reflected, was that a lot of my audience were their first language was English and my book was in Spanish.
That is crazy.
Yes.
That's a weird fact.
One mom, she was one of my first followers, because when I published my book, I had 86 followers. Ooh. And Angie could tell you that story. She loves to tell that story. But that mom...
Wait, shout out to Angie.
Yes.
Angie Abreu from
Yes.
Dominican Writers Conference, because she
Yes.
gave us a platform. She
Yes,
gave
she
us a
did.
voice.
Yes.
She also gave us opportunities that
Absolutely. I want to tell you, like, before we end,
And-
like, a little bit how I started all this.
but I don't
journey.
want to derail you.
Yeah.
The 86 followers, go.
So I had this one mom that a very good friend of mine that was working with me through this process, because I was new. The only thing I knew was how to write, but I was like oblivious about all this, like, publishing work situation, whatever. So she was like reading my book to support me, and one day she shared that a video, her son that mostly speak English, reading my book to learn how to speak Spanish.
Oh, how old was he?
I think he was like either 8th grader, like middle schooler, or maybe beginning high school.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Because so most of our teachers in New York City, and not just New York City, they're always struggling to find books created by Spanish writers, Spanish-speaking writers, native writers, so they could inspire kids to learn to read.
One of the things we're in the process of working on is like translating my first book, because I after I saw that, right, it inspired me to like, okay, I could take this book to like middle school and high schools, and I have brought my first book into high schools and shared my stories, because it's not only about hey, I'm a Dominican writer, I'm a person of color, and look, like, I look like you and I accomplish this and that, but also it's teaching them about like relationships, right?
How to get along with others and how to
and not only that, like,
how to grow.
People in high school are dating already. You know, they're probably doing things I was not even doing.
I have to admit, because I'm a mom, my daughter Andrea, when she was in high school, I was just not ready for all those big feelings and dating. But it's true. I mean, like, I was dating like at the end of high school, and so why not her? But like, as a mother, you get to be protective, and you don't want to think about your little one falling in love and heartbreak and all the messiness that comes with it.
So, like, I speak to them about dating. I tell them my stories. They tell me their stories, and they're like, "Oh my God, miss," and this and that, and then they share, and it's like, look, like, I am this age and you are this age, and you see how it looks the same. Maybe we're approaching it from different point of views, because I'm mature and you like still like learning some things, and I'm still learning too. But look how it happens, right? But when I published the first book, and when you were saying something about like even adults struggle to like read contracts and to help kids with homework, and when you were saying that, I was thinking about language and vocabulary.
That's a big one.
And the words you use, because you cannot speak to everybody the same way, because not everybody has the same
understanding
and like literacy level as you. I remember I had this job at a nonprofit, and I had to like translate a letter for parents, and I used my proper Spanish, like fancy words, whatever. And my supervisor told me, he was like, Roxana, I understand this letter and you understand it too, but the people we are
serving with, they're not
going to understand.
And so my undergrad was in psychology. I worked in a substance abuse clinic, and most of the people that were being served in the substance abuse clinic, it was through a methadone program. I want to say a good majority of them, when they had to fill out a form, that's when I noticed they couldn't fill out because they couldn't read.
Sometimes I even struggle like reading some like stuff.
But it wasn't just like the way the form was written. They couldn't read it. So I had to read it to them. And some of it was like a lot of medical jargon.
Yeah.
And they needed this for their public assistance benefits. They had to continue the program or whatever they needed it for. So I had to learn things that were not only outside of my vocabulary, like medical terms of like how many, their medical situation that was happening, but also help them plan their life. Yeah. And I was like, I want to say 21, 22. How could I plan someone else's life when I was that young? Absolutely. But that's how I noticed we have a lot of issues in this country.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues. That's why when I wrote my first book, I want it, and when I write too, I want to make sure I'm using simple language.
Yeah.
I want people to understand me. I want everybody to understand me.
Or to feel it, or feel what the message.
But if I'm using all these fancy words and
flowery.
every other word you have to get a dictionary to
like
understand.
a Shakespearean terms.
You're gonna get bored. You're not gonna.
I met this writer once who told me, I want to invent a language that's going to go part of my story. I'm like, but why? Are you trying? Like,
Why make it so difficult?
Well, it wasn't just the difficulty of it. I was like, are you making an Avatar movie? Like, even Avatar had like simple language.
And it's interesting. Like, I think like we need all of that.
We need everything.
But there's also like a place for all of that, right?
Yeah.
And an audience for all of that. You know, like maybe the points in the second book are for an audience, and the points that, you know, like, but I think that my job is not to showcase, you know, like how many, you know, words from the dictionary I could use. It's to make sure people are understanding, right? Because I want them to read my work. Once it's out there.
So having you shared that, I have the question of who inspired you to write the way you are writing. And I know you write for you, but who were the people that really made sure that motivated you to continue writing for you, and you're like reflecting them in your writing?
So this is gonna sound very selfish.
It's still you.
And egotistical.
Is it still you?
Yes, absolutely. So
okay, we're having a Kanye moment. I love this.
So, I grew up, and I always saw my grandfather writing a lot.
Oh, that's good.
And my mother writes a lot. Like, she has notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of like things. And my grandfather, he was always in a little corner on a mecedora, on a rocking chair, either reading the newspaper or writing. But my grandfather learned how to read and write when he was like around 16.
Oh, but you know what?
But let me tell you,
he wrote that was a good example.
He used to be, we call it in the art, a cobrador de guagua. So he's in the person that is in the door charging people for the money. And I think somebody saw potential in him and took him under his wing and taught him how to read and write. And my grandfather ended up like going to school and like getting prepared in all these trades that he was working for the government in Dominican Republic. He visited the White House.
La Casa Amarilla. La Casa Amarilla. Hold on. In Dominican Republic, we do not have a White House.
No. He came to the United States. He visited the White House.
Oh, the United States White House. Okay, I thought you meant Dominican Republic.
No, and it's not even yellow, it's beige.
It's beige, exactly. But we still call it La Casa Amarilla.
I never heard of that before.
You never did?
No.
I did. I was heard La Casa Amarilla. That's why I was like, hold on, the White House or La Casa Amarilla?
No, the actual White House. And for me, that was very inspiring that this, you know, like 16-year-old boy learned how to read and write so late, but still like accomplished so many things. My grandmother, I don't think she did. I'm not very sure. But I don't want to say they inspire me. I do know that my love for writing most likely comes from them.
Yeah.
From my grandfather, from my mom. My dad has like great taste in music too. And so like all that artistic thing. But the writing thing, that was me. That I picked the paper. I was shy. I remember the first time I wrote something actually.
Ooh. What year was that?
I was, I want to say 10 years old. I had an argument with my cousin, and I didn't know how to explain what was going on, you know, like to my aunt and my mom. So I wrote it, but I remember the way I was writing it was sounding like a song.
I feel like that's very reminiscent of something that I went through, but that probably is the reason you became a poet, because everything was very melodic.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things I do when I edit, the content, the rhythm. But yeah, that's how it started. And then I remember in high school, like I will do the same, like write, but I also would like write commercials.
Oh,
I would write commercials.
For anything in specific, like
sodas. Because
Oh,
I was a big soda drinker in the R. I was a big
wait.
soda drinker.
La soda roja.
No, the brown one and the one that is like lime.
Oh my God. I know which ones you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. So I always had passion for writing, but I never thought I was going to become a published author or a writer. I was just doing it for myself. Um, I like actually never thought of it. Like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a writer,
Yeah.
or no, I want to publish a book. Never, and I hated to read.
I hated to read
I
too.
hated to read in elementary. I hated reading in middle school, and I fell in love with reading in my junior year of high school.
I will tell you this much. I hated reading because, so I grew up in a very religious home. My biggest memory was like, like the scriptures. That was the biggest. Like I always grew up seeing my mother read and study the scriptures and other supporting books that talked about religious, doctrine. And my parents, I saw them reading and being very faithful to their faith. My brother, my siblings. And then to me, like, I still remember one of my fondest memories of growing up was my mom telling us stories, but they had nothing to do with a religious theme. So I was kind of like grateful for that, kind of like, ¿cómo se dice? Como divertirnos con
Yeah, yeah,
algo
yeah, yeah.
que no es temático de Dios o de religión o, like not following a certain sect. But what I really appreciated was those tender moments. Now, my grandmother, she was a very like stoic woman. She was like just very simple, but very loving, very loving. She, as soon as she met someone, she wanted to cook for them. But because I didn't realize she didn't know how to read, she was just really good at making someone feel seen and feeling very close to them. I didn't fall in love with books till much, much later. I had no idea I wanted to be a writer. I had no idea what I wanted to study. But what I did know is that I wanted to make a difference. And what was impactful for me is not only making a difference for me, but for my kids. So as we come to a close, I want to know, what was the thing for you that you wanted to leave with your books? What was the impact that you were hoping to reach others?
So, basically, and to connect it with like one of the last questions about the reflection, right? Um, when I write, and I think sometimes like art is such a sometimes like an egotistical medium.
Yeah.
Um, but I want people to be able to, besides find themselves in me, it's knowing that you can take control of your narrative, right? And it's not mandatory, but if you have the gift, share your story or help
Yes.
others share their stories. If you have the gift, right? Because you could have a beautiful story, but maybe you don't have the gift of like writing as like an author, like a professional, type of situation. Because if you could write, you could write. But it's there are people there waiting to find themselves in
In
a
you.
book, and maybe it's your job to write a book, right? And like closing story, I always have this conversation with my best friend Carissa.
I love her. Love her. Love her.
We talk about the muse, and she told me the story where the muse comes. It could be in a room full of people, and the muse comes around and kind of like deposits this idea in you of doing something. It could be a poem, a book, something. And some people, they take that idea and put it into action and it becomes something. And some people just ignore it or don't pay attention to it. And then months or years later, you see that idea develop somewhere else. And you're like, oh, I had that idea, but you didn't do anything about it. So these poems that I write, those children's stories that you write, those books that come out, that's the muse. And those ideas, that work of art, it never belonged to us, but it had to come out. We are the medium. right? And that's why it's so important that we do the job, that we write the books, that we share the stories, that um, like our ancestors, the ones for the ancestors, right? For our ancestors, the ones that didn't know how to write and read, but had all these great stories, the ones that didn't have the possibility of sharing, right? We have to do it for them too. I said that during the Dominican Writers Conference that I write because a lot of people before me didn't have the opportunity. Like 30, 40, 50 years ago, I couldn't be holding these spaces. Why? Because I'm a woman, and second, because of the color of my skin, right?
Mm.
I was supposed to be doing something else right now, right? So now I'm given the opportunity to do these things, and they must happen because it's a privilege.
Well, with that, we want to thank you, Roxana.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
saying your story, and thank you for being part of the Missing Book.
Thank you. Thank you.